Hey folks, welcome back. Second video today. It is quite cool. It almost feels like it's dropped in temperature. I'll have to check when I get done filming this. The wind has really picked up. So I've called it quits on across the road doing my firewood because branches kept coming down. So I want to remain safe. I took inventory earlier this morning and yesterday mostly yesterday, on all the birch that I have lost, the gray birch that I've lost during that first snowstorm. And there's more birch than I can burn next year. So they're up off the ground. They went up and they broke off about a third the way up because of the heft on the top of the tree with the snow. So, and I still haven't cut the one between my two woodsheds either. So I have to get up on top of the woodshed with the chainsaw in order to do that. And it's just too cold to do that. And it's up off the ground, so might as well stay right there, right? So I'm going to start with something that happened to me 2 years ago. Now, time gets away from me, but as far as I can remember, it was 2 years ago. I was driving southbound on the interstate, and it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was going to work, and all of a sudden, something started falling from the sky. I could see it in my headlights, and I could hear it. It's almost like hail on top of my car. And I could see it bouncing the road in my headlights. I could see it in my headlights. And I'm like, what is that? It was awful, dark colored. So I didn't know what it was, but some of it was sticking to my windshield. Most of it sounded really hard. And it lasted about 1.5 miles or 2 miles, going 65, 70 miles an hour. So it was quite a stretch. And when I got to work, I took my flashlight and down the bottom of my windshield, where your windshield wipers lay when they're not being used, there's that little thing that builds up with snow and ice, right? Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. I found what looked to me like a combination of creosote that you would get from your chimney, creosote balls, and boy, that wind, I don't know if you can hear that on the video or not, but it is whipping right from the north, folks. Yeah, I gotta fix the tarp over there. So it looked like a combination of hard creosote chunks and kind of like lava balls. It's the only two things I can explain what it looked like. And I thought that was the oddest thing. I asked around to different people, and a lot of people thought that there is an airport, and it's an international it's Bangor International Airport. I was heading toward Bangor, and for those people that work at the airport, they thought maybe that sometimes sometimes they have to dump fuel before they land. I don't know, but that would I would think mostly evaporate by the time. And there was no jet. I never saw or heard any lights of a jet or sound of a jet. So they said sometimes the carbon gets built up and it releases, and sometimes that could happen. I don't know. So I'm not really sure. I wished I kept that chunk, that biggest chunk. It was about the size of a nickel, and it was pretty light compared to what something would be of that size. So the other day, I kept seeing this black stuff all over the bog ice. And it looked like, almost like sand, but it was all black. And there was so much of it on the ice because there was no snow. And we got really slippery ice out of the bog. It's really smooth. So I knew the ice was safe enough to step out there on the ice. So I took my hand and I kind of rubbed it on top of the ice, bare hand, and I looked at it, and there was some stuck to my palm of my hand and around my fingers a little bit. Now it was cold enough so I wasn't sweaty on my hand, but a lot of it stuck to my hand, folks. And it was kind of sticky, it was kind of shiny, kind of like a combination of shaved pencil lead, I guess, creosote type looking thing. It was kind of shiny, but kind of dull all the same time. And they were about the size of real fine sand, like playbox sand or a sandbox sand. But it had a resemblance, because it wasn't all shaped the same, it had a resemblance of pollen. That's how I could relate it to, folks. Now, I had just done a video, folks, on commenting about the fog and the drones and how mysterious all of that was, right? So with the fog incident, people say that they were smelling a chemical type smell that came with the fog. Now, when I first got up, folks, there was fog on the way far side of the bog. I mean, way up. And that's where a lot of the fog comes from, and then it works its way down toward my area, and then it recedes that way as well. So by the time that I get up, maybe the fog had reached down my way and then was receding. I'm like, black stuff, very odd. I had never seen it on the bog before. We had fog. Curiosity got the best of me, folks. So when I had that on my hand, I brought it up and I smelled it. Now, I didn't put it up to my nose, I mean, like way up here. I kept it down here, probably a good 4 inches away, and I didn't give a hard smelling sniff. I just gently smelled it. I didn't smell anything, so I just brushed it off my hands. It didn't stick to my hands. There was no residue left on my hand at all. And then I went back in the house because I was right in the middle of doing something before I decided to go down to the bog. So it weren't a couple hours later, and all of a sudden, I had the worst bloody nose, folks. I mean, it was just came from nowhere. There was no warning, no nothing. Now, I do not get bloody noses, folks. I don't get bloody noses whatsoever unless I break my nose. And if I break my nose, then it bleeds. But I know I've heard of people saying they have spontaneous nosebleeds and all of that. I have never had a bloody nose that I didn't know the cause of when I would break my nose. Now, folks, when you're doing wood, firewood, and you're out in the woods as much as I am, I broke my nose, I don't know how many times, folks. I broke it. I've got chipped front teeth because of wood, broken fingers, broken toes, all of that, right? Split lips. My sister Bob is famous for split lips when she does her wood. So, I don't get nosebleeds. I just don't get nosebleeds, folks. But this one was massive. Now, I got thinking, okay, my rational thought was, I burn wood. It's usually hot and dry when you burn wood in the wintertime, so we all have something on the stove, an old kettle or whatever on the stove, has water in it, so it could let as it heats up, it lets moisture in the air. Well, I have one of those. I used to keep a 7-gallon stock pot on my stove, but it got in the way of me cooking on it. So this year, I think it's a 3-gallon stock pot, a small one, and I leave the cover off it, and I always keep it full, right? So I checked the indoor humidity on my indoor thermometer, and it was like 16% humidity. So I know that wasn't what caused my nosebleed. Now, I just got back from my stepdad's, and his humidity was 10%. That's about normal, even if you have water on the stove. It really is. So the only place I felt anything weird was right here. Right here. You know how you have sinus issues? I never have sinus issues. My twin sister has sinus issues. I do not. If I get a cold or something like that, or if I'm out in the cold, like the cold weather, it's normal to get the sniffles, right? But I've never had sinus issues, folks. I've never had a sinus infection. Nothing like that. So as soon as my bloody nose was over with, I mean, it was a lot of bleeding, folks. And just soon as my nose stopped bleeding, the pressure right here released. So could it have been dry heat? It could have been. Could it have been being out in the cold and in the wind? It could have been affected my sinuses. But I just found it a very, very odd coincidence that about 2 hours after I smelled that stuff that was on the bog, that I had a massive nosebleed. So back when that stuff was falling on top of my car a couple of years ago, that didn't give me a nosebleed, and I handled that chunk all over the place. So I'm thinking that was kind of explained by carbon coming off engine jets or exhaust or something. That's what I come up with for a reason. It just made sense. It did. But this here, I don't understand, because it hasn't happened since at all. My humidity is still, well, right now it's at 14%, which is still a whole lot better than 10%, right? So if y'all got any answers or theories, I would really like to know. And mind you, I want to remind you that I have never ever had a nosebleed without breaking my nose. Never have had a spontaneous nosebleed. Could it have been my first time ever, and I just happened to have a spontaneous nosebleed? It could be. But now with all this crazy going on, folks, I really have to pay attention, and I really have to wonder. Now, I'm not saying that's what caused it. I'm just saying that keep that right in the back of my head in case it happens again. But you bet your bippy, if I see that stuff on the bog, I am not going to pick it up with my bare hands. I'm not going to take my hand and wipe it off the ice, and I'm definitely not going to smell it. What I will do is I will put it in a clean, sterilized pint mason jar, vacuum seal it, and in case I want to have it tested, or somebody wants to have it tested, and then we can find out an answer that way. So that's all I've got for you, folks. This is 15 minutes. Holy old hell. So that's what I've got for you. By the way, these new gloves, these Arctic Boss, they're really nice. It's got to be below zero right now, and I've been out most of the day in these. So as long as I keep active and moving, my fingers are perfectly warm. And they're water resistant. They are not waterproof. Bye, folks.